From the board?
Seem to be fine.
No changes.
Then do I hear a motion to accept?
I move to accept. I'll second it.
Move made by Mr. Robbins, seconded by Mr. Smith to accept. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposition, show it unanimous. All right, where's the comment page?
Can you get back there to get it?
It should be back there someplace,
Say, can you
somebody
pass it
can pass it forward.
We don't think.
Not hard anymore.
I knew you'd come back with me someday.
Well, it's front and back, Jack.
Close enough slap
Pardon?
down.
The page is front and back.
Really? Oh, wow, really?
Cheryl Bennett? Yes, ma'am.
I don't know a lot that's been going on, but I just heard that we bought property, the Charleston, I guess. My question is, are we the only ones gonna be responsible for taking care and paying for everything? Even though the rest of the community, like East Plantation and the rest of the homeowners, will they not have any involvement or on paying for any of this?
To the best of my knowledge, what we have done to date is that we have obtained a right to purchase.
Okay,
We have not bought the land as per se.
okay,
That will happen if and when the judge makes a ruling at some point in the future, correct?
Yeah,
As a result, until that time, RPMUD will have to withstand all of the expenses, all of the
Okay.
costs.
okay,
The cost will, at some point in time, reflect themselves in water rates and taxes imposed by the RPMUD. If they exceed what we normally take in. That'll be up to, when that occurs, and that'll be up to the board at that time. Anything else?
well, I mean, I think it's a great idea. You know, I don't want homes or anything built, but I just sort of felt like it should be the whole community somehow.
It cannot be.
It cannot
By
be.
law, it cannot be.
It cannot be.
East Plantation does not participate,
Okay.
only those in RPMUD.
Is there any way, once you say acquire the land, could it not be basically sort of
No,
sold
ma'am,
back to the
not unless it's
CIA?
offered back to the original owner.
Oh. Oh, okay.
Am I correct?
Well, I'll say, let me add two things to that, Jack, to address that. So first, we've obtained a right of possession of the property.
Okay,
We had the condemnation hearing and we've posted the amount the commissioners awarded. So RPMUD is in exclusive possession and control of the Charleston, the former Charleston course.
okay,
And that means we're responsible for it at this point. So that's what Jack is saying. So we have exclusive possession. Once the case is over, we will be vested with title, but we don't have title yet, but we have possession and control of it, and we've made a deposit, which it covers what was determined to be the value of the property by the three commissioners. Okay, so that part's over. We're responsible for the costs. Once it's all over, I think that stuff still has to be developed. I would say that there are opportunities, for example, to have cost-sharing arrangements if, for example, East Plantation wanted to have special use of the facilities or things like that. I would expect that they would pay for some of it. So that's just stuff that has to be explored ultimately, but it's paid for through the MUD, which covers most of the River Plantation community.
Only about 60%, 40% EP. Next.
It's River Plantation's park. So that's the
Okay.
best way to look at it. It's,
okay.
but
East
it's open to the
Plantation
public.
didn't contribute a penny,
Correct.
and nor are they expected to at this time.
That's right.
Steve Turk, Steve,
I checked it, I don't have anything.
okay. Betty Brown,
I don't have anything, but
Tim Horner,
Nothing.
Reese Fenster, Ron Fenster,
Ron Pinter, back here in the corner.
okay.
I'm not sure things up here,
come up to the front.
yeah. My question, well, for the board and attorney here, how much did the commissioners determine the value of?
So the commissioners awarded $511,000, it's a little over, I'm rounding, but it's $511,000 for the entire Charleston property, 71 acres.
All right, my understanding from one of our previous meetings, everything was talking about this being a park area to start with. And at that point, I think you and Jack both made the statement that is, once it became a park, it was open to anybody and everybody. It's not just an RP thing. This is gonna belong to the MUD. It doesn't belong to the residents of RP since this is private property that's being bought. Is that not correct?
So what I'll do is, if you'll look at, if you have a copy of the agenda, if you look at item 8, so this is a public park paid for by public funds, so it's open to the public. So we can't exclude anybody on a irrational basis. You know, we can't be discriminatory on who we let in there. But the board is going to, I assume they have to vote on this, but what they're considering tonight is authorizing my firm to prepare a set of park rules that puts limitations on who can use it, what can it be used for, when can it be used, whether there are fees to be charged for its use. And one thing that the law allows, because it's a public park, is if you violate any of the district's rules, you could be fined. So that's a good deterrent to bad behavior in a public park. So that's the way it will operate. It's not a free-for-all. It's going to be a well-regulated, organized, maintained park facility.
But it is open to anyone.
It is. So you'd have to want to come in here and go to it, but if you do, you can use it, subject to compliance with the rules.
What kind of development are we talking about for the park?
I think that's something that's being discussed and established.
That would be an ongoing subject.
Correct.
Over time will develop itself, I would think.
I know it's in park.
But
Earlier discussion,
playgrounds and
they brought
things
up
of that nature, I think is what's anticipated.
Walking
One point they
trails.
were talking about soccer fields, ballparks. Of course, with any open park, anything like that, you're gonna have parking.
There's no prohibition to anything,
Parking.
Huh?
as far as that goes, as far as public use.
Say it again.
The only problem you'd have is where you're gonna park.
Right, good
That's my
question.
question.
Where?
If it's a
Anyway.
park, you've got to supply parking.
Are you finished, Mr. Fester?
Am I finished?
Are you finished?
Well, not really, but go ahead, what you want to say. I got a lot to say about it.
Well, we
should
limit
have
ourselves,
some
since we've got such a crew here, 3
Should have
minutes.
been there at the commissioners meeting.
The commissioners he's referring to are appointed, they are not our county commissioners.
I understand that.
There's a
I was there at that.
Three-member
meeting.
board
I
that was
there at the
appointed
hearing.
to hear this matter. Anyway, Mary Palsy,
Both sides of that.
nothing? Susan Owl,
No.
Denise Waller,
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, I live on Durham, and I've lived there for almost 40 years, right across from the clubhouse in Charleston. And I can tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, that when there's a big rain, those ditches along Charleston, I'm the lowest house of my whole square of Plantation Village Park. All that water comes over, and if anything is ever built, it will not be in our best interest. And I just want to say, I'm going to rely on the MUD, because one of the main tenets in the Texas Water Quality Board for MUDs is to adhere to the best interest of their homeowners. And believe me, there'll be lots of noise if there's an event center. Our quiet little place will be just a buzz with everything. There'll be flooding. It'll go, where's the runoff gonna go? It'll go all the way down to the sales office. The River Plantation in the beautiful Charleston that we know today will be gone. And that's my thing. And I know those of us on Bellegraph that are part of this community, they are gonna have the same problem. So for a MUD district, any MUD district, to sell a piece of land like this to a private entity and ruin all these houses, you know, that is just not in our best interest. So I stand firm on that. And if it happens, I don't think that the MUD would be operating in our best interest. I just hope, and I have confidence, that we have a good MUD board that would think about the, you know, just the quality of life that people have in River Plantation. Green space, is absolutely the most coveted thing that you can ever want to find anywhere. You can't find it anymore. It's just almost obsolete. And to take that away and turn that into another potential flooding area because we want some extra money is not going to be in our best interest. So, you know, they're supposed to have conservation as their main focus, MUDs. They're supposed to have park areas, nice land, and keep their residents' drainage at a certain level. So that's my stand on that.
Ms. Waller, there is no intent by the MUD to sell this land.
I
We
hope
can't
that
sell it, we can't do anything with it except as a park and recreation.
Okay, well, there's a lot of talk about it, and
Well,
that's why
the
I'm
talk
here.
should be dismissed,
Okay, so
as
it's
people
not
that
gonna be
don't know what they're
sold?
talking about.
Then
I
I'll be
think she's
excited if it's
referring
not
to
gonna be-
agenda item 6, Jack.
Correct.
Well,
It's on there.
Facilities.
The 3.5 acres that's
Right.
on the agenda is what I'm referring to. And that is right in front of our houses, and it goes all the way down to the sales office. That is huge for us. That will have, I mean, I will actually flood, and I'll have to move, and I don't want to do that.
do you flood today?
Almost. I flood in the back.
Well,
It comes
I'm
all
just
the-
asking, do
the
you flood
front.
today?
Yes, sir, I do. Across the golf course,
Has
it's
this been
already,
brought to our attention?
it's already coming across. It's already coming across. And if y'all have that, our ditches are maxed out. On a Milda or whatever it was just flowing across that area. And I know one person on next door said, no, we're high and dry. No, you don't live on Charleston. There's a lot of low places, and I've seen it with my own eyes. And I'm just hoping and praying that this does not come to pass. That's all I can say. Because it will ruin the livelihood of so many people in that area. Not just me,
Can we have one meeting in here, please?
but all of it. And that's all I have to say. I know other people have something to say.
Yeah.
But that's my story.
Pam Palermo?
Right here. This is the first time I've come to this meeting, so my question may not be accurate here. But when you're talking about a public park, are you talking about something like Central Park? Open to the public? Central Park. Constructed, centers on the facility? Is that what you're talking about? Because I live right across the street from the Red Cell's office, right down from Denise. So I'm just curious, you can have facilities on hole 1 and 9, is that your vision for recreation? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think that this is gonna be something that happens in stages with a lot of community input. It's not something that's gonna happen overnight or secretly. I represent the board, we do this in a public forum. We're not allowed to decide any of these things outside of these meetings. And so that's the good news. And so what we need to hear is your type of input. So when I say public park, it's not meant to be something scary, it's because it's paid for by the government. That means it's public property. This building is public property. But it has rules, it has specific uses, it has things you can do, things you can't do. You can't come here in the middle of the night, you can't have campfires, you can't do any of that, right? So that's what a public park will be, is it will be a facility that's open to the public, it will be highly regulated, it will have a set of posted rules, assuming the board adopts those. Again, that's on the agenda tonight. They're not wasting any time. We got possession a week and a half ago, and this is the first time they could possibly act on it, and they're already acting on it. So the plan is to put in place rules, regulations, requirements, limitations, and then develop some sort of cohesive park use that makes sense for this community.
So
And
for your surrounding residents, like across the street, will you impose like curfew hours, increased security, curbs and gutters, lighting, noise control? I mean, will you impose those types of restrictions so that your people that live right across the street will not have their property values defaced or their quality of life decreased?
yeah, I mean, the goal, I guess maybe goal is not the right word. The idea behind this is it is a preservation of the quality of life, right? It's not to make it worse. And so what you're doing is telling the board what you want in your park rules right now. So they're hearing you. I presume they're gonna authorize me to go ahead with the formal drafting of them, and based on input from you and others, that's the kind of things I would expect to be in there. Lighting limitations, use limitations, dogs on leashes, no fires, no weapons, all that kind of normal stuff. We represent over 100 municipal utility districts, so we've written lots and lots of park rules, so assuming that we're authorized under that agenda item I pointed out, 8, we're going to write some very good rules. They will be enforced. You can have law enforcement enforce them. Their signs will be posted, all of that. That's what I expect would happen.
Drainage.
Okay, next, Margaret McMahon,
McManus, yeah. Do what? Okay, I haven't lived here as long as Denise, but I've lived here a long time, and I have a comment about, I live in behind our little community. There's a huge open space, and I had a friend from California come out here one time, and he was like, "Oh, what are they going to build back here?" And I said, "That's the beauty of River Plantation. They can't build anything in this huge open space." And he's from California, and he was like, he couldn't believe it. So that's what we love about River Plantation, are all the open spaces. We want to keep them like that. So I don't know about the event center. I guess that's not going to happen then. I don't know for sure. Is it going to happen?
I don't know anything about an event center.
Okay, well, that was in something that came up, is what was going to be built out there. But I think the open spaces are what we love, and we want to keep them. And also, we have a problem, although where we live, my house is never flooded. There is a problem with drainage, and building anything extra in concrete, moving concrete in, and stopping up the drains that are there now, that's going to create more drainage problems. So I just wanted to say I'm really happy, and I'm thankful that I live here, and we don't like change. So I know that's part of life. There is, if you're alive, you're going to have change, but we just don't want a whole lot of change. So, that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Gary Kemp?
I don't have anything to say.
Dolores?
Yes, it was evident at the last meeting that nobody knew what I was talking about, and here I had been sending emails to Richard. Don't you get any of this correspondence to know what's going on within the community? I think it'd be a good idea, because I don't think there's that many PIRs going out there, so I think you could send them to the board so they would know what's happening. I've got a question here on that Corps of Engineers meeting that you guys had. I made a public information request on that. The MUD has no record of it. There's nothing in the files.
So,
Well, so you were saying that the Corps...
you've asked the question before.
Yeah, and I'm asking it again.
And I answered it.
Well,
What's the point again?
what did you answer? What did you tell me?
I told you that we went to a meeting,
Yeah,
that there were 4 people in attendance,
okay,
plus the other people,
yeah.
and that we were told at that meeting not to do a dang thing, that there were procedures, and that we were to follow those procedures.
Well, inasmuch as I couldn't get any information from the MUD, I went to one of the other people in attendance at the meeting. So I called Heather Washburn with Kevin Brady's office.
That's right.
Yes. The only thing she told me was the only thing that was discussed was repairing the lining. There was no discussion on cleaning the ditch. And there was no problem with cleaning the ditch. And for all these months, people have been getting flooded because the ditch has not been cleaned.
I don't recall.
Well, she's
What you're
got
speaking
notes,
of.
and because they did have a report. And there was no mention. When I had mentioned it before about
Well,
cleaning
I
the
don't
ditches, she
recall there
was
was a mention
surprised.
about anything about cleaning the ditch at the time.
But you're telling us that you could not clean the ditches, because you would be against the
We were
court.
under the edict not to do anything under the ditch.
No,
Now, I
then,
don't want to get into this.
Well-
You're just trying to make a point for something that's already happened. The ditch has been cleaned.
well, what I'm saying
Everything's
is,
passed.
if you
Forget
get to
it.
meetings, take some other people with you, because
did.
you and Richard.
And Heather Washburn.
But she
And the-
knew there was no
and the
discussion
people that
about
knew
the
what about it.
ditches.
Anything else?
No, I think that's about it. I just want to thank all the other directors who are here working for the benefit of the district.
Tom, Linda, both of you want to speak at the same time?
No, we're fine. We do that at home.
I know that. Lulu Chapman.
No.
Carl?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. First
Sure.
of all, with the purchase of the property, is that really a done deal, or can the owner, the current owner, appeal that? I guess that's a legal question.
I'll answer it best I can, and if the legal beagle over here can add to it, fine. The owner of the property has a right to protest and to appeal the findings of the Commissioner's Court. At that time, then I think it is remanded to a court of law, and then it proceeds from that point on. Am I correct?
Yeah, either side can appeal the result. So the district can appeal it and the landowner can appeal it.
Okay. And then, once it is a done deal and the court is going to decide an amount, is that right?
It depends. What happens is if it is appealed by either side, again, the district may appeal it. There is a trial, just like a normal lawsuit in a year from now or whatever, 18 months, 13 months, something like that. And if someone files for a jury, then the jury decides. If no one files to have a jury, then the judge decides. And it will be Judge Claudia Laird in County Court at Law Number 2 in Conroe. She is the only judge in Montgomery County that handles condemnation. So it will either be a bench trial to the Honorable Judge Laird or a jury in front of Judge Laird. That's who will decide.
And that will decide the final amount that is paid?
It will decide a final amount. There's also, I don't want to say too much in a public setting. There's other issues that could be raised if they're done correctly, but the gist of it is to decide the amount.
Okay. So when that amount is decided, then the board will then again vote to see if we still want to do that? Is that true? Or do we have to go forward because we've already committed?
Well, the district has voted to acquire the property, so we're locked and loaded on that. And there's any number of circumstances and things that could happen in the future that the board might want to revisit things, but they've voted, they've made the determination, and we're in the middle of a condemnation, and it's something that the board is doing. And keep in mind, the Blackburn wanted a lot more money than he received, but the commissioners awarded more money than we think is due. So if it gets appealed, we're going to be going to get a bunch of money back.
Or it can go the other way, though, right?
It could.
And if it does, we're still committed to it?
Yes.
If the court says it's $2 million, we're committed to it?
We can appeal that.
Yeah.
We don't have to accept the 2 million.
Well, I don't think we can talk legal strategy in too great a detail in this.
Well,
forum,
no, we
but,
haven't, but it's my opinion that we don't have to accept it unless we want to. We can vote at that point, and that'll depend on what the circumstances are financially.
There's legal standards for if and when a governmental entity can abandon a condemnation project midway, so those would apply. So we would have to, if that was something that ultimately wanted to be done, we'd have to follow the law on that. So it's a technical thing. But I feel good about our case. We did very well at the hearing. They got less than a quarter of what they were asking for. And if they appeal it, or we may appeal it, I'm gonna do my best to get it for even less. And I'm very good at what I do.
And then a very different question. Is it possible that park area can become a golf course?
No, not if the MUD owns it. We are prohibited from owning a golf course.
Well, Jack, if I could be slightly more precise, we can actually operate a golf course, but we can't sell bonds to fund it. So you would have to have enough non-bonded money to do it. So that may be the same thing as saying you can't do it. But but you can. It can be a golf course, but it would have to be funded by the community through the MUD, through fees or whatever. Because the only other mechanism a MUD has is issuing bonds, and they can't use bonds to operate a golf course.
All right. Kurt, Nicole.
Hi. My question is, if this does come to fruition, where are the funds coming from to pay for this, and how does it impact our reserves? So that if there is a MUD failure for equipment or something needs to be replaced, that is not impacted and we're able to make the repairs or replacements as necessary.
It comes from the coffers of the MUD. And the coffers of the mud are replenished by revenues from water and sewer, tax revenues, and if possible, if probable, which an election would have to be held, we can raise taxes, we can sell bonds, and we can go for a loan from the Texas Water Board, which they give loans for. We can go for a gift, if you want to view it as such. There are a number of avenues available for how it can be funded. The question is whether you have the time to do it once you're giving the edict to buy it.
I just want to know that there's enough, you know, maybe Richard can give us some input on that there's enough there will.
Well, it's in
Have the
it's in our,
assurance that
it's
there
in
will be
our
enough
report here, and it'll come out later in this meeting
Okay,
as to how much we have in reserve.
okay,
Anything else?
thank you.
Ted Allen,
I have no comment.
Gloria,
No.
Sam Jones,
Question's already been asked. Thank you.
Joe,
I envision, and correct me if I'm wrong, it is the area to look like a green belt similar that's what's adjoining number 4 Biloxi. Is that correct?
I wouldn't have the vaguest idea. It hadn't been decided at this point in time what to do with anything. We just found
The
out,
Frisbee Park, you're talking about, on the right side
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
fairway?
yeah. You know, they got walkways along there and they play Frisbee and stuff like that.
yeah, I haven't the vaguest idea, nor, we just got awarded this on the 7th of January, 6th of January, so it has not come up
But
before
we're
this board.
thinking green belt type area.
I would assume.
Okay.
Jack, I got one question I forgot to ask, though, that just came up. The maintenance of it, you've got an option on it,
That's on the mud.
so is there a plan in the near future to mow it? I mean, just basic,
That is to be discussed at the meeting later on.
One lightning strike will clear it all out.
Yeah, well, let me just add.
Or an Australian outback fire.
Yeah, we don't want that. It's item 7, so the cumbersome thing about governmental affairs like this is the board has to do new business through a meeting. And so it would have already been mowed, except that you have to have the meeting to authorize all that. So that's on the agenda tonight. I assume it'll pass, and once it's done, what is up for consideration is a regular mowing and maintenance schedule. So once they delegate to Richard that authority, we don't have to wait for a meeting to do it anymore.
One other thing, Jack, Jaws down there. Since we're gonna have both sides of that, are we gonna be responsible for maintaining that creek or?
Yes, sir.
We are?
Yep.
So we're talking about possibly bulkheading it or something?
Isn't that the county creek?
No.
I believe it is.
Engineers takes care of it.
Yeah,
Not to my knowledge. They don't,
I don't think it's us.
they won't do a thing with it.
No,
Nobody claimed it.
Corps won't do anything with
The
these.
county wouldn't do anything about it. They won't even remove the tree that's about to go down the
Right.
bridge.
That's because they were waiting for.
They won't until they talk to the owner of
owners.
the land, because they have to step on that person's land to do
Right.
it.
But that's just
By
happened.
the bridge.
Huh?
Yeah, so you're back again.
Yes,
Street's
sir.
been down for.
One quick question. It seems to be that for the Charleston, everything is mainly for park space, green space, to stay open like that. Why then are we involved as a MUD? Why didn't they work something out with RPCIA to keep it that way? Why did we step in and get on that?
RPCIA, to my knowledge, doesn't have the right of eminent domain.
That's not the question. I know they don't have.
Well, that's the reason why.
Why didn't they work something out with Mr. Blackwell?
Well, that's-
Everything?
I can't answer that question. I have no knowledge.
How did we get involved to condemn it? Why did we?
Somebody brought it up that was the thing to do.
Is it?
It's your opinion.
For what reason?
Yeah, I've already voted. You know my opinion. Next question to Mark Denham.
Yes, in fact, picking right back up with the same conversation. In fact, I praise the board for making that decision because of flood mitigation. It is a huge concern, obviously, in this neighborhood, and more homes will flood if we start putting more pieces of building, more footprints of foundation and so forth. So I'm glad that this decision was finally made. I support it. And of course, what I envision when I hear people say park, that's just a very loose term, but again, it's already been mentioned. Green space, of course, with the dog walking and just the walking and the bicycling and the whole thing, right? Not bringing in more infrastructure, because that is, for the most part, a flood area anyway. So you can't build up this area, because it just goes back to the original problem that we have. In addition to where it'd be nice to even look at maybe sanctuary for a lot of these beautiful birds that we have around here. So, you know, it could be water features, whatever,
The
you know,
yard's full of them
low,
right now.
you know, depth water features and that kind of thing. But anyway, these are just things that I'm throwing out. So I am concerned about whatever's going to be brought up. You know, it's out of order as far as me being able to talk about it, because I only see it on the agenda. So the 3.45 acres is a concern. Whatever discussion's going to come out about that, I would just like to say that the decision, the piece of property that has already been voted on, and my support, my desire, my prayer is that y'all keep that property and don't be slicing it up. Because that was the whole reason to do this, is for the protection of the homeowners, for the mitigation of the flood issues that we have in our community. And if we start slicing it up and kind of changing our opinion on different pieces of property, then that could just come back and haunt us again. So that is, if I had a vote, that's what I'd be saying. Do not reverse your original decision.
I want to address that real quick, just to make sure everybody knows what this board is doing with that agenda item. Anyone can bring agenda items to the board, are you with me? So this is not something that the board has put on this agenda because it is intending to do something.
Yes.
It is against the law